Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the South American Pro Dota podcast. I think I screwed that up. SADPP, that's the podcast you're listening to. Today, we don't have a player for you, but instead, we've got somebody in the management world. You might know him from the team Beastcoast. They're currently 5-0 in the upper division in South America, still dominating as expected. The Peruvian squad that was under the Anvorgesa banner, and now they're under Beastcoast. They've been there for a while, and we're going to learn a little bit more about it. We got Grant Zinn here. He's the CEO of Beastcoast, and well, I'm pretty fucking excited, man. How the hell you doing?
Doing pretty good, you know. Love to be 5-0. I think coming into the season, we were feeling pretty good, and it's good to see that our good feelings were justified in that way. I know for a lot of people out there who watched us during sort of the COVID era, we sort of slumped a little bit, and people were getting a little bit nervous. But I'm glad to see that we're back in fighting form and impressing the fans and doing what we're here to do, and you know, make some waves.
Hell yeah. And of course, we've got Bowie with us per usual, our South American on the ground, the boots in Brazil. He's going to make sure we stay on the right course here, our fact checker, and, well, just all around badass guy. Buddy, how are you? Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing really well. It's actually really nice meeting you because I remember talking to Guashi after the RTI run. And she was looking for orgs and all, and I'm really happy, you know, they ended up staying with you guys because it really feels like you take good care of the players.
Yeah, I mean, glad to hear it. You know, I think we have been working together now for over a year, which feels absolutely insane to say since the end of TI9.
Yeah.
You know, we've done some great work together. I think the boys have really grown since they've joined the team, and you know, I talk to them all the time. I talk to Guashi pretty much every single day, and you know, I think you know, we're doing SA proud in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. How old was the org actually when you signed Beastcoast? When you signed the boys to Beastcoast?
So a little bit of a history lesson here. We actually had a Dota team before the Anvorgesa boys. We had an NA roster that used to be called Team with Eternal NB and IX Mike. We played at MDL Disneyland. Didn't do as well as we might have wanted to do, and then you know, played a little bit in North America. I think that season we were probably, you know, neck and neck with Complexity as, you know, the third best team in NA, you know, with Forward Gaming and, you know, EG obviously being at the top. And then, you know, TI9 happened and we were sort of reevaluating, you know, where we were going to be in Dota going into the 2020 season. And obviously, you know, the Anvorgesa roster really jumped out as these guys are absolute killers. These guys look really good. You know, they had their insane TI9 run. And then as they were getting ready to come home, I started talking to Guashi, and we made it happen pretty quickly.
So were you guys scouting more? There's definitely been a lot of dialogue about North American orgs operating in South America, some value in terms of exchange rates there, some value in terms of being able to provide infrastructure that's missing from that region. A Chaos Esports Club had a very small run trying to do it. So I would say probably unsuccessfully, especially since they pulled the plug on it before too long. I don't even know if they lasted a year. Were you guys scouting for South American opportunities and then that squad popped up as just the best opportunity, or was it more specific to, hey, here's this squad, they just happen to be in South America, we're just chasing this opportunity that's timely, maybe, let's say?
I'd say, you know, for us, the most important thing, well, it was sort of two-pronged. I mean, the most important thing was, can we have a roster that can compete at an elite global level? And the second thing was, you know, can we have a roster that drives a fan base and drives engagement, and you know, we can be visible in front of fans at majors pretty consistently. And so we were talking to rosters in NA, we were talking to rosters in Europe, and you know, we obviously ended up in South America. But I think the priority for us was mostly, you know, let's support a roster that we can really get behind and help them be their best selves and do their best work and, you know, have room to grow. And I thought that the best opportunity for us in that capacity was, you know, obviously the Anvorgesa boys.
Gotcha. So how about
combination of factors?
Yeah, I mean, how about initial struggles though? Diving into South America, first things first, language barrier. Obviously, Guashi speaks English, and she's the manager. Was she the point of contact for the most part when initial negotiations took place?
Yeah, Guashi obviously has been the point of contact. You know, she was with the team before us. She's still with the team now. You know, she's sort of the head of, you know, all sort of operations in regards to getting the boys where they need to go and helping them organize the things and stuff like that. And so, you know, she was the main person we talked to when we were sort of negotiating with the roster. You know, Stinger speaks some English, and so obviously I've talked to him. Met all the boys in person numerous times. So I talked to all of them. We have, calls as a team, probably once a month. And Guashi usually does the translating if there needs to be any sort of translation. But we formed pretty good relationships with all the boys to now. But in the very beginning, it was obviously Guashi, and like you definitely said, there was a bit of a learning curve getting down to South America, growing the organization. We've done the best that we could to accommodate sort of the language barrier, and we've been focused on a lot of different ways that we can help sort of bridge that gap. I know a big priority for us before COVID, and now again that the season's restarted, is that, giving all the boys access to English lessons so they can brush up on their English. We work with a sports psychologist, who normally works with the Mets and Yankees, not the Yankees, the Mets and the Giants, and he works with a lot of South American professional athletes that come up from South America into North America, and they don't really speak that much English. They're now huge athletes and they're super famous, and he works with them on how they deal with sort of the struggles and trials that come with being a complete unknown, and then the next day you're a super famous global athlete. So
interesting.
We've tried to do a lot to make the things work in regards to them, and we're happy to do it because they're absolute killers and they have a huge fan base, and as best as we can support them, that's what I'm interested in doing.
Gotcha. So, Bowie, one thing, I need you to verify this for me here, but I've kind of heard through the grapevine that in South America, there's still a gap in terms of orgs and players and trust. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of iterations of different orgs where they've kind of promised the moon to players and then not followed through. They've offered egregious contracts where they take huge percentages of prize pools or pay really low salaries. I've heard that some of the known orgs in South America, without naming any, have used tactics of like taking them out to expensive dinners, showboating with booze and all this kind of stuff. I've heard like exotic animals and shit. Hey, come hang out with my tigers. So first of all, Bowie, how true is that stuff? And then the follow-up here is, Grant, did you experience any of that? And like, was it hard for you to get that trust with the players, knowing that there's been some baggage there? So Bowie, you first.
That's definitely true. I think both from outside of South American orgs, I guess the Chaos roster issue that you talked about is kind of true in the sense that they promised a lot and ended up not delivering, probably because of the internal contracts that we don't really know much about. But with Brazilian orgs as well, I think 40-50% cut contracts were kind of common, and pretty much the only that's a lot, and pretty much the only way you could get like team house or like actual infrastructure in terms of having an org. So it was pretty rough, and I think it is still pretty rough. Beastcoast is probably way out of the curve in that regard, right?
I mean, for me, I can't speak for what happened in the past on other teams. I've heard plenty of stories coming down there and talking to the boys and talking to Guashi about how things have been done. And obviously, my compass has told me to do the polar opposite and, be a person that the boys can trust and listen to them and give them what things that they need to succeed. And really just be sort of in their corner in that way. And I think, putting the players first has always been, the Beast Coast way. And, I think we've really tried to not just, we provide value through our actions and not by our words. And, we can promise the moon and stars, but at the end of the day, we're here to do a job and they're here to do a job. And, if we both do our jobs the right way, then everyone will win. And their job is to go kick ass at Dota, which they're definitely doing. And our job is to help them do it. So, it's a winning combination.
Yeah, now it is. But at the very beginning, was there like a sales, like how did you build that trust at the very beginning? Or did they give you the benefit of the doubt a little bit?
I think.
Did you have to prove yourself? Like when you first offered them a contract, did they believe that you were going to pay it, for example?
I think in some ways we had to prove ourselves. I mean, I think Guashi knew me from just my various sort of esports dealings over the past, couple of years, and she had heard things that I was a trustworthy guy, and that sort of passed through to the boys. But I think the proof was really in the pudding. And for example, if we had come down there and spent the first couple months just screwing around, I think it never would have worked out. So but I never expected that to happen to begin with. I think for us, it was just we're gonna do what we say we're gonna do, and we're gonna do it right, and the boys will learn to love us in time, and that's sort of what happened. I think that there was some interesting sort of wrinkles in the beginning that we sort of had trouble sort of navigating and figuring out from day one. I mean, our first event together was the ESL1 Hamburg, which was an amazing event. I don't know if you guys remember. There was the crazy series against Wind and Rain. We got top 4, beat Fishy Gaming. Coming out of the gate like that was a huge boon. And then I don't remember if the qualifiers for the Chengdu Major were before or after that, but we didn't have the team house ready for the qualifiers for the Chengdu Major, and navigating that whole level of infrastructure in South America was something very new to us. So we actually played the Chengdu Major qualifiers from Brazil, and there was some headache around the flights getting to Brazil and getting everything organized and getting everything figured out, and it all worked out in the end. But there was a lot of sort of stress throughout that process to make sure the boys were in a good place to play the qualifier and qualify for the first major. And definitely was a little bit of a rocky start, but we pulled through.
So now you've got them up in a team house. What do you guys provide specifically in terms of infrastructure? I mean, there's a little backstory on that question. I was stunned when we sent our questionnaire out to these lower division and upper division teams, and how many of them said to the question, what would you do with the prize money if you won a major? Buy a computer. Like, what? I knew that, sort of through memes and stuff, that there were some players in South America that didn't have computers. I thought it was more of an anomaly and kind of outliers. If you're on that, if you're a high immortal player and you're, playing for money and competing in tournaments and qualifiers. But seems I was wrong there, and the norm is that most players are borrowing hardware, going to net cafes or whatever else. So I'm curious, specifically what kind of infrastructure you guys are bringing down there.
Yeah, and I guess for us, in terms of the way we figured things out, I think after or during TI9 or even after TI9, Whisper and Schofield didn't have computers. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I remember that being there was some sort of thing where they played out of LAN cafes, and then we went and got top 8, and then they did really well, and they probably went out and bought computers after that. But beforehand, I don't think they had any sort of setup like that. In terms of our setup down in Peru, we have a whole team down there. We have a team house that they all live in. We have a cook. We have a house manager. We have a regional director in South America who sort of handles things. Guashi is the team manager. She handles all of that. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, as safe as we can be now, we have English lesson classes. We have a guy who come in to do physical training with them, workout stuff. We shoot a lot of content for our Spanish language YouTube channel in the house, where we do a lot of shows with Spanish language talent, which the fans really like. And so, we have sort of a whole crew down there that sort of keeps the engine moving and lets the boys sort of focus on just playing. And I think it's doing pretty well.
Very cool. Wow.
I think I have kind of a boring question, but if you don't really have to get into the specifics that much, financially in the sense of having a Peruvian account or something. Was it hard to make how can you explain this? To open your Beastcoast Peru, did you actually do that, or can you just use PayPal for everything? How does that work in terms?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do you guys have Beastcoast SA and Beastcoast NA in terms of entities?
Yeah.
It's just all NA right now. I mean, it's definitely something that we've explored, in terms of making sure that we're being compliant and tax, advantageous and everything, to make sure that from a legal perspective we're doing everything right. But for the most part, it's just Beastcoast Gaming Incorporated. That's our American company. And in terms of international wire transfers and things like that, we before Dota and before South America, we played Rainbow Six Siege. We have had European players and talent playing a bunch of different games. So we figured out the international wire transfer landscape pretty well over the past 3.5 years that Beastcoast is in business, and luckily I have a great co-CEO who sort of handles the whole financial aspect of the operation, so I can focus on the stuff that is not that, because that's really not my forte. But we're doing it right.
So how many of you guys got on staff now? What's the Beastcoast org got in terms of number of employees versus number of contractors?
So in terms of us as an operation, for the people who just follow us and know us for Dota, that's just one of the games that we play. We have a team in the Rainbow Six Pro League. We have a Valorant team. We have a crew of fighting game players and streamers, and those are all of our sort of talent, I'd say. And then from an organizational perspective, we have, I think, 18 to 20 full-time employees now. A lot of the people that we work with are full-time content. We create a ton of content. A lot of it in South America, a lot of it in North America. We have a social media team. We have, general manager. We have managers. We have
20 employees. That's a pretty serious operation,
people.
man. That's
I mean, we've been growing. We've been scaling things up. I think that a lot of teams I think struggled in COVID really, really badly. I think that it was sort of a wake-up call for the industry, and a lot of people just couldn't make the right adjustments. And I think we just figured out things that we needed to do to keep doing what we're doing best. And a lot of that was around content and making content from home and doing streaming and stuff like that. And we've been really fortunate, that we've been able to continue to grow and excel. And, we're happy to be in a spot right now where we can be continuing to provide the best sort of resources and experiences to our players so they can go out and compete.
What percentage of your sponsorship sales would you say are reliant on your Dota team relative to all of your other teams? Like, if you didn't have the Dota team, how many sponsors would you have relative to how many? Because you guys have quite a few now. I was looking at your website, and it's a pretty impressive list. Like, Betway is a big one. It's all over the jerseys, so I see it on camera and stuff a lot.
HyperX.
But yeah, you guys have Horus, Techstars, 4Loco, Respawn, the chairs. I don't know what Intervent is, but sounds cool. 4Loco. How the fuck you closed them on an esports team? Congratulations on that.
Yeah, that was a fun one for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think for 4Loco specifically for the North American audience and for the fighting game stuff that we make, I don't think that 4Loco you could even get it in South America. Obviously they love being associated in some capacity with the Dota boys and their success, but that's not really their bread and butter.
Yeah.
I'd say for, it's difficult to put a finger on it. I think, every team at Beastcoast provides a lot of value in a lot of different ways. And obviously, like you said, Betway is really focused on the Dota market, and that's a huge thing for us, and we're happy to work with them. And like Gigabyte Horus also, has a really big love for the Dota boys, and they all, use Gigabyte Horus computers, and we're happy to work with them as well. But
they actually have distribution in South America, right?
Yeah,
they're like a truly global brand. They're one of the few big boys that can really say, yeah, sure, every country, give me the demographics, we're in. We got distribution somewhere. It's actually impressive how wide the reach is of that brand. It's they're
super great. They have a huge market share down there, and we're happy to continue to be associated with them in that way and put them in front of the fans. When I went down to Peru 2 times ago, we went to Lima Games Week, which was a great experience. Gigabyte Horus had a huge booth. Their team is absolutely great to work with, and they love working with us. We love working with them, and we've done a lot of cool videos and content with them that we're super happy about, and they've been a great partner. I would say, in terms of the broader question about what percentage of the team is Beast Coast, the Dota team, it's hard to say. I mean, we've grown a lot over the past couple of years, and we have a whole sort of contingent that's interested in the North American stuff, and we have a whole different contingent that's interested in the South American stuff. But I think that sort of barrier is rapidly coalescing because the viewership for South American Dota is being increasingly watched by more and more global fans beyond just South America, and so it's becoming more of a mixing pot, melting pot of just the team as a whole is just one big organization, and we play a lot of different games all over the world, and I wouldn't really pin any specific thing on one specific team, but I think that, they're
well, I know Betway ain't sponsoring you for the fighting games, dog.
No,
I mean, come on. There's a couple obvious things that we can get out of the way here.
It's a little bit of an evasive answer, but I think that, we,
I hear you.
Well.
Yeah, it cross-pollinates for sure.
Yeah.
So sorry, Bo, I'll let you chime in a second. But another hard question, and I feel free to skip if you really want to. But how's your cash flow? Like, are you guys still reliant on investor burn rate, or are you guys actually cash flow okay to the point that you have enough revenue to support all of this infrastructure investment and whatnot?
Well, to put it in a way that I think, is fair for the outside audience is that, I don't think Beastcoast would be continuing to grow and expand if we felt like we were in a bad spot. So we're doing good. We're feeling really good. We think 2021 is our year. We have, great partners. We have great teams. We got great players. We got great investors. And we're certainly on the right track towards where we want to be in esports.
Sounds like burn rate. Okay. I'm just curious because, like with EG, for example, right? We've seen some of these really big tier 1 teams that I think have gotten overvalued. I mean, if you're looking at your valuation is like 30x revenue, I don't know how to take that seriously. And we've seen a lot of them really invest on like the internal side of, okay, how do we build out this sales team? And I think that's something that ESL has been specifically ahead of the curve with. Their sales team is absolutely massive. And that's why they've been able to close like Mercedes and DHL and some of these really huge, like beyond tier 1 sponsors, you know, these like global Goliaths that have these crazy marketing budgets that kind of only want customized activations. I mean, you got to figure if they're giving away a fucking Mercedes for the MVP of every tournament, that's got to be a pretty big contract. Like, how big is your sales team, I guess, is maybe a better question. Because I did a little bit of selling with Dendi and his team, and I was a little surprised at how challenging it was. Obviously, that's a very new brand. You guys have a lot of trophies, and they don't have trophies, and that's a big part of being able to sell sponsors from a team side. But I'm just very curious. Like, it scares me a little when I see that it's like, are we a bubble? Are we bubbling? And that's sort of like the root of what I'm trying to get at here. So it sounds like you guys are not in bubble phase, and that makes me very happy. Beast Coast is steady. It's good, and we don't have to worry about you guys going, oh geez. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, man.
I mean, I think for us, you know, we've got a 3-person sales team right now. I think we've been able to punch above our weight in a lot of ways and, you know, be pretty successful in our growth and in our story and the way that we sort of market ourselves. It's sort of expanding as we continue to grow because obviously, like you said, it's just a huge part of esports in that capacity. And I think that, you know, the rosters that we sort of represent and the content that we make is just, you know, a really great recipe for success on the, you know, if you have a sort of piece of product or a sort of a consumer service good that you want to put in front of a certain amount of eyeballs. I think we do a really good job of representing eyeballs. I think we have a lot of really passionate fans, and you know, we are expanding our sales team to continue to go out and crush those opportunities and continue to grow the Beast Coast brand into, you know, a variety of other sort of interesting areas and continue to, you know, expand our business.
Awesome.
I guess kind of like in the same context, what do you think is the struggle for any teams to get actual orgs? Like I actually saw a tweet from Quincy Crew recently where they were like actually looking for people to make hoodies for them because they don't really have an org. What's your take on that?
I think the thing that I sort of realized is that, you know, being a champion and being a winner isn't enough anymore in esports. I mean, winning TI, I think that's enough, and winning a major, maybe that's enough. But, you know, the most important thing for a lot of these teams, I believe, especially as a growing team, is content, and is about reaching the fans and creating stuff that the fans will interact with and organically be a part of. And I think that, you know, in terms of what we've been putting out, it's just been very successful. You know, our audience, our fan base is extremely engaged with the stuff we put out. If you check on our Facebook or on our YouTube, like the comments just go forever. Like people are just talking in there, theory crafting, like making, okay, this draft is really good, this draft is really bad. Like our social media engagement and our fan reach has been really, really good. And, you know, that's all, you know, in part due to the success of our roster, but in a lot of parts due to the way we've created the content around the roster to sort of give the fans an eye into just how we do things. You know, I don't know if you've seen any of our content, but we've done like different hot mics where, you know, we had sort of the comms from the game that we beat Nigma at the Dream League Major, which I know is like a fan favorite video. We've done like boot camp tours, stuff like that. And that kind of stuff is just a really great way of engaging with fans and providing value to our partners. And I think that for a lot of these teams that have, you know, the record to prove, you know, Quincy Crew, absolute killers, you know, it's new Undying team doing amazing. There's a lot of rosters out there that are doing really well. I think, you know, the thing that they're going to need to put them over the edge, or the thing that the sponsors or the future sponsors of those organizations are going to need to really make the investment work for them, is to just create content that the fans want to engage with. And I think that, you know, the numbers from the DPC leagues have really spoken for themselves. Like the viewership for Dota, I think it's been really good. I mean, you look at North American Dota viewership, it's, you know, pretty high. You look at South America, it's really high. You look at Europe, it's absolutely massive. Russia's really good as well. I think that, you know, the viewership is great, and that sort of shows that there's an engaged fan base, but you need to capitalize on that fan base even further by, hey, I watched your game, now I'm going to go watch all YouTube vids and follow you on social media. I think that's sort of the step-by-step process that needs to happen for these organizations.
Yeah.
So like you're saying that if Beastcoast, like let's say another team instead of Beastcoast gets top 8 in Tier 9, do you think just because they were Beastcoast from SA, like that by itself maybe gave them an edge for you to hire them? Just because like they had this massive fan base pretty much because they were kind of like a dark horse, and Quincy Crew is not a dark horse necessarily. You think that has something to do with it?
I mean, I think Quincy Crew in some ways is a dark horse. I mean, if you look at North America,
yeah,
EG has always been the kings, and Quincy Crew has always been on their heels. I think from the perspective of the good performance is just I think sort of step one of the equation, and then capitalizing that performance and generating a positive growing fan base off of that success is the next step. And so like I think let's say Beast Coast never signed Ambergesa, right? Let's say they went to TI, they top 8'd, and then they just didn't do anything to capitalize off of that fan momentum. I think that they could be in a very similar situation to a lot of the other unsponsored orgs in North America and South America that maybe had great results, but they haven't been able to sort of transition into stability and success long term.
Surely, were you guys the only org that made an offer for them? I would have imagined they fielded multiple offers.
I can't speak with any sort of clarity on the other conversations that we had or they had with different organizations. I know that there was a lot of trepidation around entering South America that a lot of organizations that maybe considered them thought was too much of a risk. And I know for us, we were pitching it to some of our investors and our sponsors. They were like, South America, man, like, woo, like that's definitely going to be something. And for us, it was just sort of like, Beast Coast has always been, the esports team that could, the little engine that just, we're just going to do it. We're going to make it happen. And, a risk and a challenge for us has always been something that we sort of welcomed. And so, all the people that sort of were like, oh, it's not going to work. Like, this is a whole new demo. Look at like the previous forays into South America that never worked out. And use that as your baseline before you make a decision. And for me, the way that I looked at this roster and the way that I look at our story is instead of all of the things that didn't work out, I like to look at, the Luminosity Gaming into SK Gaming into MIBR CSGO roster that completely shattered the dynamic for South American Counter-Strike and became one of the most successful rosters in the world and said, if they can do it in Counter-Strike, why can't I do this in Dota? They have just as big of a fan base. They're just as good, in my opinion. Let's set that narrative. That's going to be that's my goalpost. And so that's what we sort of went for. And I think we're sort of on track for that.
Well, it's also nice to be able to sign a team that doesn't have any buyout clauses in their contracts. I can't imagine Ambergesa had any strings attached there.
No, that was, they were coming out of TI. They were like, hey, man, we're free agents. We're looking for the right home. Are you guys at home? And yeah,
dude, that is such a ridiculously golden opportunity that I think so few people appreciate. And what upsets me so much about North America, I've talked about it a lot, but when you have a team org like JStorm and then that org just fucks off and those players become business associates or whatever else, value is lost when that happens because those contracts have buyout clauses. When someone else wants to come along and put those players into a team, money gets moved and it builds the whole ecosystem. There's an infrastructure built there. When it just evaporates, we're going back multiple steps. And it's one thing for a region to not have that yet and be an early mover where you're breaking in before that's been established. It's another to watch North America have it and then kind of devolve and fold into itself. I mean, I think right now South America is trending to be in a much better position than North America is, depending on whether or not you consider EG a North American team. They are technically, but you see what I'm getting at here.
Yeah. I mean, I think sort of the ultimate person to point a finger at in regards to why has Dota in North America become the way that it is versus other regions is esports media. And I think that esports media spent a lot of energy reporting on Counter-Strike. They spent a lot of energy reporting on League of Legends, Overwatch League, Call of Duty, Valorant, these other games, and North American Dota 2 is just very quiet. And I think, if you're not Beast Coast, where the people who work at Beast Coast have a combined 30,000 played hours of Dota who have gone to like every single TI and we're absolutely obsessed with the game. If you're just not familiar with the Dota ecosystem, it's very difficult to navigate and very difficult to break in.
Agreed.
And, you know, in two-part, you know, I think that people have been burned in the past by organizations that have sort of disappeared and, you know, been unsavory and, or, you know, promises they made didn't work out. And I think that a lot of North American organizations are sort of wary of another one of those organizations popping up.
Yeah.
And I think that they have good reason to be, because it's been a difficult sort of couple of years in North America. And I think that for the, you know, non-100 Thieves, non-G2s, non-Envies, you know, non-mega orgs, it is difficult for them to sort of enter into a conversation with the North American Dota organization in a position of, I'm trustworthy, I'm here to support you guys, let's work together to build something great. And I think there's a little bit of, not animosity, but a little bit of mistrust on both sides, where the NA orgs that are potentially percolated around the idea of Dota are like, well, I don't really understand this game that much. I don't really understand how it works. And TI is huge, like the viewership is good.
How do I buy a team slot?
Yeah, it's confusing for them to navigate. And on the other side, it's like, hey, I'm a North American team that's doing really well. You know, I'm nervous about signing with an organization that doesn't really understand the game that I play. And that there's never really been, well, there hasn't been in this, at least this season, that coalescing of, we understand each other, we know what we're both reaching for, let's make it happen. And I think that in part it's because, you know, mainstream esports media organizations don't do a good enough job talking about Quincy Crew's success or Undying success, or, you know, any of these up and coming NA teams that have really put in the work that it's required to be a winner. And I think that they have every right to be signed by a top org. And I think that, you know, the orgs that don't think Dota is worth it for them are really not looking at, I think Dota is the best esports investment you can make today in any game. I think every other game is just, for, you know, League of Legends, all right, I'm going to drop $25 million to play in the LCS.
I see what you mean. Yeah, that Dota doesn't have that same.
To play Overwatch. That game has no fan base.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop some absolutely absurd amount to play Counter-Strike, and their ecosystem is even more confusing than Dota's. Like, maybe it's because in some capacity the NA Dota player base is not that big, and so in that way,
it's a big part.
You know, if you're a MOBA fan in NA, you probably play League. I think that's maybe part of it. But there is, you know, a very interested and very committed North American Dota fan base that watches these events religiously. And I think that, you know, if you sort of reverse engineer EG's success over the past 7 years, you know, it's possible to build that sort of dynasty, you know, with the North American powerhouse. And like Complexity exited for whatever reason, I'm not going to point any fingers, but I think that they really had what it took to stay in the game. And they've been, you know, they were longtime Dota supporters. I think, you know, if they wanted to jump back in and sign one of these top teams, you know, they would be welcomed. But I think like orgs like Cloud9 and orgs like Complexity, you know, they had misfires, you know, down the road where they invested in a roster, they thought they would succeed, and they didn't make TI, or they didn't get the result they wanted, and it was easier for them to just cut the cord than try again. And in some ways, I think part of that is that, you know, as an esports CEO, you sort of have to be very not sort of nostalgic or connected to the games that you play. And so, you know, as a CEO, you know, I love Dota so much. I played it for my entire life. If Dota was a bad investment, I would have to be able to say, you know what, it's a bad investment. We're getting out. I can't run this game for my organization to succeed. And I think that in a lot of ways, that sort of nostalgia keeps people in Counter-Strike and keeps people in these other games that they probably shouldn't be in. But there's no really, at least in my experience, there's no real esports teams in North America pushing that narrative where I love this game a lot. I want to keep playing it. I'm going to make it work no matter what. I think it's just sort of.
I think there's truth in that. Like a lot of the big orgs, we've seen that. Okay, why has like Liquid been in for so long? Yeah, they were an early mover, but fundamentally, it's because key people at Liquid fucking like Dota. That's really I think you're very much right about that. If you don't have that key person in your org that's championing Dota over all of the other games that you could choose from, it's not a sexy sell from an outsider who doesn't like Dota. Is one of those games when you play it, you know the passion other players have for it, And like those are the all of the easiest sponsor sales of my life have been with gatekeepers that play Dota. So I don't have to explain the passion. They immediately get it. They're like, I get it. It's a bunch of fucking crazy people, and if it resonates, they'll buy the shit. That's how this works, you know. One of that's kind of switch gears. One of the things I want to ask you about is transparency in player salaries. Do you think that we're moving in a direction where I guess maybe a better starting point is that a good thing? Should we have transparency in player salaries? And do you think we're moving in a direction where that is an inevitable future? I mean, professional sports, that's a thing, right? That's one thing we don't have here in the Dota space.
I think it, in some ways, is a good thing. I think that the wider Dota audience, or just the wider esports audience, they, the actual amount for top organizations and what they think an actual top organization costs are very different numbers. And I think that you've seen in some other esports like League of Legends, there's been a lot of salary transparency, and even in Counter-Strike, there's been a lot of transparency lately.
Cloud9, yep.
That has been, I think, in some ways good, but in other ways, I think that, total transparency and total cognizance and recognition from the fans in some ways is good, but I think in a lot of ways, what I've seen over the past couple of years, maybe not so much in Dota, well, in some capacity in Dota, has been sort of an arms race for players and for organizations. And, by all means, like if you're a top player, like get that money, get paid, like, whatever you can get, like you deserve it, like go out there and do it. But I think that when all this outside investor money came in, it sort of encouraged these CEOs to just be like, I'm going to pay whatever it costs to win, and I'll worry about how to justify that purchase later. And I think that is a recipe for stagnation. I think it's a recipe for...
Well, what's wrong with the transparency? I haven't heard a drawback of transparency. What's the argument against? Give me one firm argument against why the general community shouldn't know what the players' salaries are.
Let me think for a second.
Because I think it's just a good thing. I see why nobody wants to be the first to reveal it, because you will be victim to unfair scrutiny as just like the one guys out here, and they'll assume what the top players get made. But if I could flip a switch tomorrow and have all the salaries be public, who gets hurt?
I think in some ways that's good. In most ways that's good. You obviously, like you said, you don't want to be the first person like, hey guys, I'm going to jump in the pool first, and everyone else is left standing on the side like idiot. Like this guy went first.
Was it a mistake for Cloud9 to do that for Counter-Strike? Because to my knowledge, they didn't have to do that, did they? Wasn't that elected?
I think they were trying to set the tone in that way in esports, where they were going to be like, hey, we're the biggest dogs in town.
Bragging about the kind of numbers.
Team. How is this going to hurt us? Like, I think in some ways people look at those numbers now and they're like, wow, for what they're paying, this team is doing awfully bad. And in that ways, people are like not feeling super positive about it. But, for the organizations that feel comfortable and feel like they can sort of be like that figurehead and that ambassador, maybe it does make sense to sort of give the fans and give the community that sort of clarity so they can have a better understanding of.
Well, all right, forget about the fans. I mean, as a leader in South America, do you feel like if you guys were a early mover in going public with player salaries, that could help A, give context to other players in South America that don't know what their worth is, and B, jumpstart some accountability and chain reaction within the region of like, hey, this is at least a starting point for a tier 1 team. Do you think that could start a chain reaction, or am I living in the dream world?
I mean, I don't want to speak ill of any of our South American compatriots, but I think that we're in a little bit of a different situation than they are, where, we're coming from North America. We have, sponsors and investment, and we have stability that we can provide to the team that has been very successful for them. And I think that, for the majority of other, maybe it would help other NA orgs jump into South America if they knew what we were doing and saw our success. Maybe that's the success for the team.
That wouldn't be bad either.
Region.
I love North America, but I'm happy to see South America grow as well. If we can jumpstart some org excitement, man, fucking sign me up. I'm right there with you.
I think that it could be good for the scene overall. I think that it would just be you don't want to be the first person, like you sort of said. And I think overall, like if it was a thing where, hey, we're going to put our cards on the table and help the players figure out what they're worth and help the players understand what goes into being a successful team, I think that would be good. But I think, in addition to that, fielding a winning organization, in my opinion, just goes far beyond the salary investment. It also goes into the organizational investment. It goes into the stability that you provide. The things that you do beyond just, hey, here's your paycheck, go win for me, are what make winners, I think. And I think that, one of the reasons, beyond just, the Anvergesa boys were kicking ass and we were really excited about them, that we were excited about overall is that, if you sit down and you look at the South American players by the numbers in terms of how good are they at Dota, it is absolutely insane. Like from a stats perspective, from a playership, from a in-game, how efficient are they? Like, what are they doing? Right. Like Hector, absolutely absurd carry. Chris Luck, when he's going mid against some of the best players in the world, he doesn't even flinch. He plays out of his mind. Whisper, Schofield, Stinger, all these guys were some of the best players in the world by the numbers, even before we got in the mix with them. And so from that perspective, you look at all of these players that are coming up in South America that are in the lower division and the upper division. You look at KYXY, who's I guess going by Faker now. You look at Cookahhook. You look at all these players who were like, man, these guys are so good. But, there's just like a little bit that you need to just do to like really give them what they need to become like the winners.
And to unlock the next level. Yeah,
exactly. And I think for us, we helped our guys unlock their next level and become as good as, they are now. I like to think that if we didn't come in and support them, they would still be as good as they are now. But I want to give us a little bit of credit of helping make that happen.
You're Michael Scott and yourself. They're more effective when I'm not here. Actually, they're less effective when I'm not here. Wait. They're equally effective whether or not I am here.
They're great. They're great.
It's all great. I see what you're saying.
I think that, though, like if another organization, like Beastcoast or North American, European, even South American was really willing to do the level of behind-the-scenes work that we've done to give the boys the platform they need to succeed, you would have another, tier one team in the world globally. I think Thunder Predator's on the cusp of that. I mean, last season they were really doing well. We were, even before COVID, they, really took us to the brink in the LA major qualifier, which obviously never happened. And people were really saying going into that major, like, are Thunder Predator better than Beastcoast? Like, these guys are kicking ass. Like, that was something that I was like, oh man, like the era of South American supremacy is beginning. And I was getting really excited by that. I think that a couple seasons of this DPC league and you'll start to see that talent emerge. I think from a regional perspective, the A teams in South America are closer in skill than a lot of the other regions. I think that if you look at, I don't want to badmouth anyone here, but if you look at North America, the top of the pile in North America, the bottom of the pile in North America are very far apart. Yeah. But if you look at like Infamous, who's now at the bottom of the table, they took a game off Thunder Predator. Like those guys, when they're on, they're really good. Like Packaxe, who's Angel now. Like, I thought that player was an insanely good up-and-coming carry. Mr. Jeans, when he's on, is doing really well. And I think it's just a matter of, not even just, like, spurt moments of success. It's just about building discipline and consistency, which I think has always been the flaw of South America. And that's what we've been really trying to build at Beast Coast is, we're going to be disciplined. We're going to play every day. We're going to practice. We're going to, focus. We're going to be treating this seriously. And I think that, if you look at the European teams that are disciplined, why is Secret so good? It's because they're absolute monsters when it comes to scrims. The players need the organizational support to be the better versions of themselves that they maybe don't have the maturity to do on their own. And I think, the older players maybe have, but there is really no really experienced, really disciplined retired or long-term players in South America that can build that bedrock that these teams need that they have in a lot of other regions. No PPDs, no puppies, no Karokies.
Bowie, you guys have some old school players, right? You don't.
But I don't think they are that accomplished.
Well, they're not TI winners. Yeah, they're not PPD.
Yes,
but
and I think obviously we have these Tavos and HFNs, but I think most of, obviously it's really hard to compare, but I kind of agree in the sense that we as Brazilians and South American players, we play more by field than by discipline, and it's I know it feels wrong to say that, but I kind of agree knowing these players.
Yeah.
You know?
So I say, oh no, because that reminds me of StarCraft 2, and that is exactly how I would describe the old guard of StarCraft 2 players, Wings of Liberty, like 2012, watching them get stoned before playing matches, having like midday cocktails and stuff, and this kind of like, yeah, I play the game on feel, I'm super creative, and it's like, yes, but I think there is a net loss here, and you guys are gonna really get outscaled by like, why do you think the Koreans are beating all of us, man? Because they've got discipline, because they treat it like a job, because they've got a practice regimen, because they're laying off the booze. So I say that as just like, 5 years from now, we're gonna look back and be like, man, we really weren't taking this that seriously when we could have been, huh? I don't mean that as a flame.
I think that sort of leads into the saga of finding the right coach for Beastcoast, where when we wanted to sign a coach, we're like, okay, who's the best and most experienced retired player in South America that, has had, accolades and accomplishments on the world stage and is really experienced, can pass that experience down to the boys, and someone who the boys really trust and respect from a
Red Monster. Who the hell's that?
So that leads into it. So we had Red Monster before COVID. He worked with, I think, G Pride before us, and I think that's how Stinger knew him. And Stinger recommended him to us, and we started working with him. And this guy is like a draft genius. Like, this guy is like doing mock drafts with Stinger all the time. This guy is analyzing huge amounts of data from all the other teams' drafts to figure our drafts. And that's been, I think, really helpful. Pre-COVID, when we beat Nigma and did really well at the majors, he was putting in that work. And even, now in the DPC, 5-0, I think people have really been impressed by our drafting, because this guy is just like some sort of wizard behind the scenes with the drafts. Like, he's just thinking about it all day long. From a gameplay perspective, he's not really there to provide, like, hey, Hector, like, your farming pattern, like, look here on the map, like, go there. Like, that's not really what the value that he brings. And I think in that capacity, it's been difficult to find someone who has that level of I'm a top player experience to bring down to the boys. And I think part of it is because, all the Spanish language players who do have that experience want to keep playing. Like, Moose coached us during COVID. He provided a lot of value to the team. I think from an international perspective, he is one of those players that has the most international success. Something that is valuable to me is that Moose speaks fluent English and fluent Spanish, so I could talk to him. But Moose wanted to play this season, and fine by me. Like, Moose, go out and get it. You're a great player. I hope you have all the success in the world.
But still,
fingers crossed for you. But from
indicative of the problem. Yeah.
I think one of the people that I've sort of been very interested in, who sort of has a full-time career casting, is that, Fogged. He had a lot of success as a player.
Good fucking luck, man.
You
want to hire Fogged as a coach? How much you ready to pay the guy?
Well, we're not hiring him right now, but he's someone I've thought about, because he speaks fluent Spanish. He really likes our boys. I'm not, he has a very successful casting career. I don't think he's ready to move away from that yet. But, there have been casters that have moved on to become coaches. Look at Blitz. Maybe
not ones that have cast TI Grand Finals, dog. That's get the hell out of here.
I like to dream. We'll see.
It's good to dream. It's nice to reach. I'm just gonna bring you back down a little bit, because that one's I wouldn't be reserving the seat. Let me put it that way.
Anytime he's ready to hang up the old headset and get in the booth, I'm ready to have that conversation.
All right, that way. There you go. I feel you. That's a good way to frame it. I like that. But no, man, it's awesome to see that you guys have put so much tender loving care into this infrastructure, and that it's kind of paying off. I mean, like, Bowie, this season, it does feel like Beast Coast is another level ahead. And we've talked on the DPC broadcast a lot about how it seems like these teams, this is the first time you can really leverage that infrastructure in a way that has crazy results. You get a whole week to prepare for matches, right? If you have a coach versus not having a coach, that's already a crazy advantage. If you've got a coach and an analyst, right, or an emotions coach or whatever you call it, like, all of these things you get all this extra value out of, where compared to the old model, when it's all these qualifiers, you're playing these 14-hour days. In some ways, it doesn't matter how much infrastructure you have, because there's no way to handle that sanely. 14-hour days are fucking stupid. It shouldn't happen. Sometimes it does. That's where, like, sometimes these crazy upsets can happen, because you can't leverage your infrastructure, and these teams with no infrastructure are just, they got nothing to lose. They're in it. They're playing on the cutting edge. So very cool, man. It's cool to see the results. Congrats on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the long-term vision is to build, like, the South American Dota dynasty, where EG has been the kings of NA for as long as I can remember. I don't remember a time when there was a team in NA that was better than EG ever. I mean, maybe pre-TI4, if you go back that far. But I think for us, we really want to show what we've seen, that, South America, from a talent perspective, from a fan base perspective, from a growth perspective, is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting regions. And I think that, we've sort of shown what can be done, and we invite those who want to attempt it to come join us down in South America. I mean,
I'm surprised more haven't by now.
I think maybe if we go in and do work at a major, or we do really well at a TI, people will wake up to the cause. I think that Singapore, when it happens, if it happens, fingers crossed, if we top 4 that, I think people will really start reporting on South American Dota as a whole. I mean, even from a Dota reporting perspective, the thing that I've seen is that if you look at like VP Esports or Join Dota, all the articles, Europe, China, Southeast Asia, NA, Russia, very little coverage for South American Dota. And I think that is also something that is, a missed opportunity. I think the games that we've been playing down in South America have been very good and very competitive. The drafts are interesting. I think play styles out of the region are really good. I think that what it'll really take is for a team like us, or whoever, also qualifies with us, fingers crossed, into the major to really, if Beastcoast top 8, but the other SA team, last place again, people will be like, Beastcoast is the anomaly. But if both teams really start qualifying and getting into like the top 8s and top 4s and really showing that they can take down these international teams, then I think people will really wake up to the cause. And I think the potential is all there. I think it's just waiting for either the players to get the results that the organizations need to see, or the organizations to have a little faith like we did. But I think SA is going to become a global powerhouse in the next couple of years in Dota.
It's a feedback loop, right? The more they win, the more money comes in. That's more infrastructure. That's more training. That accelerates how quickly they can improve at the game. That reinforces more results, and that whole system just kind of keeps building itself. So, I'm fucking hopeful, man. I know Bowie is as well. It's been a struggle down there, eh?
Yeah, actually, like in terms of the new DPC system, do you feel like it increases the chances that we see more orgs getting SA teams, or like teams in general, or you don't like the model, like for a business, for running a team perspective?
So this has been, I think, a topic of contention in the scene from people who, both org side and player side. Do they like this model or not? I really like the model. I think that it provides us a lot of stability. Like you said, a week between matches gives us time to prepare, gives us time to shoot content, which is what we're all about anyways. It's what our sponsors want. And it gives us, like a really focused way of saying to the people that we work with, hey man, like this is the SADPP leaderboards. These are the games that we play. This is what matters.
It's cut and
Before
dry.
Before it was like, all right guys, well we got the LA major qualifiers. We're gonna get some DPC points there, and then we got MDL Chengdu. We're gonna get some points there.
Hard to quantify.
It was just so difficult for non-Dota people to just wrap their minds around it. But from the perspective of, if you're like a non-sponsored team like a Quincy Crew who, was cleaning up at a lot of these third-party tournaments and doing really well for themselves, the prize money across the season has been slashed in a lot of ways. And that hurts a lot of teams that don't have, stable salaries and living situation and things like that. And that sucks. I empathize with that. There's, I think, a way that Valve can sort of even the lumpy year where, hey man, like we got the DPC and that's like, like this, and then TI is like out of this world, and then we're back to DPC, and third-party events aren't going to really happen anymore because the schedule is so spread out that you can't slot one in, and every team is just way too focused on DPC anyways to care about some random third-party event unless you're like, potentially Division 2 and you just, need that extra sort of layer of buffer and prize money.
Yeah.
But you've seen, Tundra signed a team in Europe. High Coast signed a team in Europe.
We've seen a couple.
It's happening.
We've seen a couple. Yeah. One of the last things I want to ask you about as we're getting close to the hour mark here, the equity versus equality when it comes to DPC, right? And for anyone that doesn't understand what I'm saying, equality, every region gets subsidized with $150K or whatever it is from Valve for that region, right? The org pays the other half the prize pool and all the production costs. That's equality. Equity would be evaluating the scenes, coming up with some distribution of, hey, Europe matches get this kind of viewership. It's monetized this way. It's worth this amount. And down here, we've got NA and SA that are monetized in these ways, and it's worth about this amount. Let's disproportionately subsidize these regions so the end result is kind of leveled out, right? That's equity. And I think part of the reason Valve doesn't do the equity model is because they will kind of die on this hill of, we don't play favorites. They've always done that with TOs. It's always a platform where it's like this open kind of free market. It's all capitalistic-y kind of stuff. They don't want to play favorites. They don't want to be the gods that make or break different companies at their will. However, I fear that dying with the equality model ends up playing favorites after a while, because paying 150 grand or whatever to do DPC for Europe, it's a fucking layup. They're making hand over fist. You see how many ads are on that fucking broadcast? I don't think North America and SA are making that much money. I think they might be breaking even. It might be okay, right? BTS and Dota Pit are pretty good at monetizing, but you don't see a lot of sponsors on either of those broadcasts. Especially Dota Pit. All of their lands have had way more sponsors, way more call-outs, way more activations than what we see right now. So, long-winded question, but are you an equality guy or an equity guy? What do you think here?
I mean, I can speak from the organizational perspective, where I think that it really comes down to a matter of, why do people watch the games in every region, and for what reason? People watch Europe because they think Secret and Nigma and OG are the best and most exciting teams in the world, and OG won 2 TIs, and Secret has had some crazy runs, and they're always a contender, and this is where the meta is built, in their opinion, and that's what attracts the most eyeballs. And I think the ESLs and the Dreamlings of the world are able to go out and like you said, capitalize off of those eyeballs. And I think that they see potentially from an outside perspective, the NA and SA regions being a little bit less interesting. The meta's not defined there. These teams are just going to get washed at majors anyways. Maybe not EG, maybe not Beastcoast, but the other ones, like, who cares? I can't really speak for the Southeast Asian and the Chinese broadcast, because they just, there's not enough hours in the day to watch all the Dota that's out there.
But, I feel you there, man.
Yeah, but I think that, in a perfect world, from a TO perspective, it's so hard to say. I mean, I think some of the sponsors and some of the partners that are out there, are just waiting to see what the aftermath of this first iteration of the DPC season is before they really plunge in. And I think that's why you've seen potentially some of these unsponsored NA orgs are still unsponsored, even though they're doing so well. It's because nobody wants to dive in the pool in the middle of group swim. People want to wait to see what happens afterwards. They can look at the numbers, then make a decision, and they can say, like, hey, this unsponsored team, when they were playing, the viewership looked like this in season 1, and if they have a similar success in season 2, we can capitalize off of that and make our sponsors happy and things like that. I mean, in a perfect world, equality is the way to go. We're all equal, but I think equity is what we have to do now, while things are the way that they are. Or did I flip that?
Well, equity would be giving different prize pools to different regions, saying like, hey, it's cheaper to buy the rights for South America because we know it's harder to monetize. Therefore, Valve is trying to create trying to create an incentive for orgs to want to do these regions, right? In theory, Bowie disconnected, by the way. He's frozen on this, like, looking up at the sky face. So that was why I was chuckling as you were answering there. But, this age-old question, what would happen if nobody bid on South America for a DPC season? Like, what happens if for season 2 it's offered to Dota Pit again and they go, well, yeah, it was fun, but honestly, we lost some money on that, and I don't know if we really want to lose money on that again. And then they go down the line and someone else goes, I don't really know how to monetize that either.
These guys passed. I don't want to deal with it. Yeah.
So, like, the next logical step is, well, okay, let's find a way to subsidize this so somebody will bid on it. And eventually there's a tipping point of like, oh, well, if I don't have to pay, sure, okay, well, now I can do it. That, everything has its price, so to speak. So that would be equity.
I think one thing that needs to happen, and I'm hoping we're going towards this direction, is, obviously everyone sort of heard about the DPC fan bundles that the teams are allowed to create, and I think that's a really good opportunity for the teams to provide value through their fans. And the more popular the team is, the better your DPC bundle will sell and things like that. I think that TOs need to be able to capitalize off of that as well in some capacity. Where, hey, if I'm Dota Pit and I'm running South American broadcast, there should be a way that I can capitalize off of that through in-game, like a courier or something, or through like an in-game set like they used to do, and monetize in that way. Or maybe, what I think they should do, and I think would be very cool, because making 5 chests for every region, maybe not the way to go. I mean, it could be a lot of work. I think what they should probably do is do some sort of DPC battle pass, and half the revenue from the DPC battle pass gets split among the 6 TOs, and that's the way that they can help monetize off of the viewership. And then every single TO can run an ad. Maybe each chest in the set is from a different region, and then they have like maybe a South American artist will create the set for SA, and an NA artist creates the NA set. And in that way, if I want to support Dota as a whole, there are 6 great sets made by 6 regional artists supporting 6 regions, and I can buy it, and then that money gets split 6 ways. And that way, the TOs themselves can have a little bit of a slice of, what in some capacity the teams are going to generate.
Good old days. The split of the battle pass, man. I yearn. We didn't know how good we had it, man. We really didn't. We took that shit for granted so hard.
The fan bundles, which are still not out, even though it's already week 5, I think are going to be what's required to generate a healthy ecosystem. And I think it's a step in the right direction for sure. I think teams are going to be really happy once they can, monetize off of their fans. And I think that the next step is allowing the TOs to monetize off of the fans that are watching the broadcast they put on. They shouldn't be restricted to monetizing through sponsors exclusively. I think that the in-game platform in the store offers a really great way for, fans to get involved and support the things that they love. And we've seen how the Battle Pass gets supported, and this is the next logical step. So if, Valve wants to take a meeting and listen to my ideas, I'm ready and willing.
Well, if there's any listening to this show right now, it's a surprise to me. But hey, Valve, glad you're listening, and you're welcome for the free consultations here. Grant, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much for sharing more about the inner workings of Beast Coast, giving us a little bit of light into the South American region. And I appreciate everything you guys are doing to bring some eyeballs. Bowie and I have been kind of trying to do the same thing on the other side, and I totally agree with you that content is king. That is the future to all of it, and really the key to monetizing this shit. So to wrap this thing up, man, hit us with the plugs. Where do we find all this stuff? What's the hot bitchin' item in the store right now? What do you got Beast Coast wise? Sell it out, baby. Sell it out.
So for us, the big thing is, if you want to support our Dota boys, you can always go to our store and get some of our sweet Hamburguesa merch, which is pretty awesome. You can also watch Beastcoast Hamburguesa, our Dota exclusive Spanish language YouTube channel, which is great. People really enjoy it. Follow us on Instagram, where we do behind the scenes videos pretty much every day of the boys just doing their thing after games. It's been great content. Awesome. You can follow us on Twitter, which actually something interesting that we've learned, maybe Bowie's talked about it, is that the South American audience doesn't really use Twitter. It is mostly Facebook.
I'm working on that. I'm trying to encourage them that Twitter is the future, but they really, really like Facebook, man. It's insane.
So from what I can speak to, why Facebook is so much bigger in South America than North America is that Facebook is completely uncapped from a data perspective. You can watch Facebook streams all day long for free. Twitch isn't, and other platforms aren't. So that's why the South American SA language broadcast is on Facebook, because
I had no idea.
It's free to watch it.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know either. It was just like, why are people using so much Facebook out here? And I was like, oh, it's free.
My God.
And I'm like, oh, Twitch isn't? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. So
it does. That's a game changer. Totally.
That's a huge one.
That's just rational right there.
So buy the Beast Coast Lunar hoodie. We're dropping it. I think we already dropped it. It's shipping out now. It's really sort of sweet. Stay tuned. We do we have like a little, mascot crest. We have a physical real life axolotl that predicts all of our games. We're also making an axolotl plush. And watch us play on Friday, where we're going to hopefully go 6-0. So that's how you support Beast Coast.
Yeah, there you go. A lot of Dota still coming up. We got like a week and a half left of DPC, so we'll see if there's any crazy upsets, and obviously that second place of who goes to the group stage in the major is still pretty hotly contested. So a lot to look forward to. Gang, give them a follow. You probably have heard of Beast Coast by now, but if you're not, get on the pulse and follow these guys because they're tearing it up. And of course, if you enjoyed the SADPP here, the South American Dota Pro podcast, give us a follow as well. The Zyori podcast Twitter. We're on the Zyori YouTube and iTunes, Spotify, all those other places. Bowie lost his internet, unfortunately. Classic Brazil, as you can see here, always paying homage to South America here on this stream. But that's it for us today. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Grant, take care, buddy.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, and have a good one.